Close to Halloween at the CAN conference, and talking with Chappel and Russell Johnson. Other names come into my head here. These are two young men that had been involved with the Chung Moo Quan or John C. Kim style schools of martial arts, and Russell was in Minnesota and Kurt in Houston, Texas. And their story is quite interesting, and so we will begin the interview. My name is Joe Zimhart, and I've had the pleasure of doing some counseling with these young men. Okay, all right. Let's get back to some history here. Let me start with you, Russell. Give me an idea of go back to the beginning when you first got interested in martial arts, and what it was that brought you into Chung Moo Quan, how you got attracted to it, and how your first stages of involvement were.
I was living in a low income neighborhood, and it was violent, and at that time Chuck Norris was like really popular, and I remember I was watching a Chuck Norris movie one day, and it got me all kind of pumped up, so I went through the yellow pages, and the reason I picked it was because it was the closest school to my house. Mm-hmm. So I went there, and the instructor, right away when you walk in the door, the school has like a certain presence about it.
It looks professional?
It looks professional. Mm-hmm. And then the guy comes out in his uniform, you see all these black all over, black on the collar, black on the shirt, pants. And
it's a white uniform with black on it, right?
Right.
Okay.
And it was very impressive, and he pretty much, my first lesson was he told me to punch, and I punched at him, and the guy hit me about 10 times, and before I knew it, he was gone, and next thing you know, he's like tapping on my shoulder. He's behind me, and never had seen him move, and I was like, I wanted to learn that.
Yeah.
And so I started going to that school. My father signed me up. I was 16 years old.
16.
I was very impressionable. At that time, my mother and father were divorced, so I was kind of using this person as more like a father figure type.
Yeah. What about your personal health at the time? Were you overweight, thin, or what?
I was in good shape because I worked out at a weightlifting gym regularly before that. So up to that time, I kept myself in pretty good physical condition.
And so in terms of the first lessons, were you impressed right away when you were taking the lessons? How much did they cost?
My first lessons were $20 membership fee and $38 a month.
Okay.
And I felt that was not too bad.
No.
And the classes, they were very tough. I seen people pass out, and I felt challenged to go through it. At the beginning, I couldn't do anything right, and I felt like that I was incapable of doing this.
So did the instructors really impress you?
They did, and I wanted to be able to do what they're doing.
Okay, let's go to Kurt here, and so your story. You were in Texas, right? And
yes.
How many years ago did you first encounter the group?
1985, and I was 28 years old.
Were you married at the time?
No, I wasn't, but I was living with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I met her before I got into Chung Moo. And I had been an athlete most of my life in college too, and then I hurt my back on a job, and I was under painkillers and muscle relaxants, and I started another job that was well below my capacity, and so I was very depressed. Not only from the drugs, but from my position in life. I thought I had nowhere else to go. My doctor told me to go look up a martial art place, my medical doctor, and improve my lot in life, so to speak. And that's how I walked in there, and actually I saw a flyer. They put a flyer where I work, and I saw it, and I looked at it, and I had a dream in my mind. When I'm reading this brochure, I had a dream, is there any possibility that I could be anything like this I would love it and I'd do anything to do it.
Was there a
And-
picture of anybody on the poster?
Yeah, John C. Kim was plastered all over it, and his very cultic type language and loaded language was filled 3 pages of the brochure. But it was the first time. It was a ploy that worked on me. The blue. It's called the blue literature, and it really worked. It really made me snap. That's what really first got me in. And then later on, they would always ask you, what got you into school, you know, and people would say different things, and I always said it was the blue literature. And then when I went in, it was like Russ said, it was just spotless. It was I'd never seen a place like this before in my life. It was so over-organized. It was just unbelievable. And they were so nice. They seemed to have the most passion of any, not passion, compassion. They had the most compassion of anybody I'd ever met in my life, because I was in a condition like I felt like nobody's going to want me. I was ashamed to walk into a spa because I was so out of shape, and I was hurting. My back was hurting.
Did you tell them you had a bad back?
Oh yeah, they were real interested in all that.
Did they say they could possibly heal it?
Yeah, but they also stand up real strong, and when they're telling you these things, you're getting already the impression that yeah, you can do it, but there's a lot you have to do in order to get it.
Right.
And you're not really entirely sure what that is, but whatever it is, by the looks of this place, it's got to be legitimate. So I'm willing to do it. So that's the way it worked. Yeah.
Sure. So it felt right. And what about your first classes? What do they cost? And
Oh, it's $50 a month and $20, initiation for the dues, and that was all right. And initially, I saw what I know now as cultic things, but I didn't then. And very soon on, I began to go into a shock phase because I saw these grown men that could physically do things I'd never seen, and I'd been in athletics my whole life. These guys were phenomenally.
Okay, now tell me something that you saw them do that it was phenomenal, specifically.
Well, first they'd ask me to punch, just like they say to Russ. They want to show you how bad you are, and then then you punch, and then they yell at you, "Come on, really punch, really punch!" So you give it all you have, like you're going to attack someone, and then they show you how to punch.
Right.
And then you see their body flying across the room with their hand looks like an anvil, and their arm looks like a thrusting log, and you can see that a guy's face, if it met that, would be the end of him. It would just be like a banana.
Yeah.
It would be splattered all over the face. These guys are really good.
Yeah.
And bouncing around, and they're big men, and they're doing things, and they're 10 times more flexible than me, and they're twice as big as me, and I couldn't understand it.
Were most of them like
Big.
weight, a lot
They're
of
all
weight on
big.
them?
Not weightlifting type big, just
Right.
big,
Big
but
guys.
very athletic, extremely well toned, very conditioned.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've been in athletics all my whole life, and I know the human physique, and I know the capabilities of athletics and what men.
So in other words, they look like they had something behind their.
Oh, there is
talk.
something behind it. Yeah, there's
Okay.
no question about it. Yeah.
All right, so let's back up a little bit here, and there's a stage that people go through in most martial arts training where they don't want to just go once a week and kind of hang out, but they want to make a commitment to maybe go a little further, become like an instructor or an instructor. Was there some stage that either of you reached that's and how soon into the teachings or the exercise were you already reaching that stage where you wanted to make a commitment to whatever it is, like you say, school? It wasn't the school, it was school, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, so when did you make that transition, and what
For
caused
me,
it?
it was when they started, I think, giving me more mental discipline. When they started correcting my speech, when I didn't do something that they wanted me to, and they had me drop down, do push-ups right away. They started giving me discipline, something that I was lacking. And then I started looking up to this person more of an authority figure, and I started wanting to be like him.
You mean the instructor?
Yes.
Okay. Had you met John C. Kim at this point?
No, I did not meet John C. Kim until 7 years later.
Oh, okay. So, what was he? How was he just? How did you see him? How did you feel about him from the beginning?
I always heard these stories about John C. Kim, and I wondered, well, is this a real person? The instructor talked about how he could float around the room and elevate his body 7 times, how he could injure somebody without even touching them. Like he could just throw his hand out and the person would fly back.
Yeah.
And I'd hear all these stories, and in back of my mind I was questioning them, but I was nodding my head yes at the same time.
Yeah.
And I wondered, is this for real?
Yeah. Were you ever influenced by, say, some of the more magical elements of martial arts shown on television or the Kung Fu series or whatever?
I believed that they were possible, and that I didn't look at. I thought that it was parts of the human mind that John C. Kim was able to tap into. I didn't realize how that it was mystical thinking.
All right. Did you believe at the time that this form of martial art was 1,500 years old or whatever, and that John C. Kim had been champion of all Asia at one time?
I did, and then when I questioned things, so they would say, well, Master did say 1,000 times say, 1 time see, meaning when you question something, they'll tell you something 1,000 times, but until they show you it and you see it, then you'll believe it. Like if they said, well, this one practiced hard, he brought down a lot of money, he moved up quicker. And then next thing you know, somebody's promoted, they said, see, we told you. And now he's moved up quicker. 1,000 times say, 1 time see. Okay. So now he tried that much harder. And
I see. So in other words, they did use terms like, if they brought down money, they moved up.
They would tell us that to move up, you had to have your practice, your physical body movement, and the amount of money that you brought down had to match.
Had to match okay, so in other words, the more money meant more power, in a way, and more gain.
Yeah, it was supposed to be showing how hard you were trying, the more money.
Okay, so how much money are we talking about now when you want to make a commitment to the group? How does that work?
Well, at first it starts out, like for me, it would start out $38 a month, and then I moved into private lessons.
Okay.
And then,
how soon?
It was within about 6 months' time.
Okay.
And then what they'd do is they'd put me with someone who was in a special private lesson.
Right.
And they would show me a private lesson movement, and special private would get more movements than I had, and they'd make me feel left out. And I wanted to learn what this guy was learning. And then they would put me in, I'd practice in front of a mirror, and then they'd put the students in like the black belt course behind me.
Yeah.
And I'd be looking in the mirror, and I'd be seeing what they're doing, wanting that.
Yeah.
They always played it against you. And then when someone was accepted into the black belt course, they told them they had to be recommended. And once they're accepted, they line up the whole class, and they announced how hard this person tried. And they have this big ceremony, and then everybody comes up and congratulates you. It's kind of like this peer pressure. You want to be like that guy who's
so what you're saying is getting into or committing to a black belt program is a real step of achievement,
right?
Getting accepted.
Not just everybody is supposed to be able to get into it.
Did you know anybody that was rejected at that time?
Well, if they were like homosexual,
okay.
That type would not be allowed. I think it was like private lesson, or someone who they felt didn't have the type of mentality that they were looking.
And in terms of the relationship of women to men, were any women accepted, or how many women were in the class?
With women, there was more men than women, and one of the reasons was that John C. Kim has a lot of phobias about women. Like on the first of the month, I couldn't sign up a woman. I had to wait till a male signed up first. Like if a woman came in for the class, I'd have to call and say, hello, Britta, say this is assistant instructor Russell. Britta asked if the first has been covered, and then he'd tell me whether or not I could sign up this woman.
Okay.
And then I'd have to say, well, you have to come back, I'm out of membership forms.
Now, how did you explain that to yourself? Let's say that particular thing about, what was the...
They would tell us that that instructors have 3 weaknesses. One is women, gambling, and what's the third one? Drinking.
Drinking, okay.
And that women, that a man should be in control of the relationship, and that a woman should follow by man. Otherwise, you lose your mind to a woman.